Welcome to Shoe Leather Faith. I'm Robert McMillan, and we're continuing our series on the plan of marriage. We began last week, and I know that I missed a week because I was seriously jet lagged from 6 weeks in Japan visiting family, and now I'm back here in the great state of Texas. And we're dealing with the plan of marriage. We started off last time with marriage is part of creation. The first institution established in a perfect world with perfect people without sin was marriage, and it was the only institution established. There were no churches, no synagogues, no government, nothing but marriage. And we started off day one of the creation of man and woman, and that's the sixth day of creation. We dealt with the first part of that last time. Marriage is a lifetime commitment. If you're not willing to be involved for a lifetime, don't get married. The second thing I want to deal with is the fact that marriage is the basis of social organization. It's the core of the family. And yes, it's being aggressively ground down into the dirt by a culture that's out of control and godless. The fact that government, particularly through the public school system, considers itself a change agent for human behavior should cause us some concern. The family has been the only acceptable change agent, at least in God's mind, and I wouldn't say change agent, I would say they're the status quo agent to keep things stable and regular and functional. Even with sin in the mix, and sin continually grinding down on our greatest values, even with that, marriage is the status quo agent that we should be supporting, not the government. Our government wants to replace the family with government agencies, and that's not a good thing, because government agencies don't know how to deal with the family. So let's look at the next thing. We know it's a lifetime commitment. We know it's the basis of social organization, but it's also the vehicle by which society cares for women and children. And we're going to deal with children right now, and I'm going to deal with women separately in the next video. And in between now and the publication of the next video, I'd like you to do a little study for me, because I need your help. There's a file on my website, shoeleatherfaith.org, and I'll put the link down below, and I'd like you to download that and study it. It's got raw notes on the issue of 1 Peter 3, verses 1 through 7. And that passage ends with the weaker vessel. I need your help to help me understand what the weaker vessel is. We know it's a woman, but what makes her weaker? We'll deal with that in a separate video next time. I'll just go over the top of it this time. What I'd like you to do is download that and study it, and when I teach on it next time, I'd like you to comment. I need some direction, because I haven't got this fully resolved. I haven't got this halfway resolved. And I've studied the language, I've studied the grammar, I've studied the cultural context of the day in which Peter wrote it, and Paul in 1 Corinthians, and I need your help. So please download those raw notes. The file is called 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7. Me, obey him. It's on one of the pages of my website, and I'll give you the link down below. Let's get into the issue right now. I realize that marriage, being the vehicle which provides care for women and children, goes against the storm surge of culture as it overwhelms long-proven social verities by many of the progressive movements in our culture today. And these movements are undermining the stability and health of the family. They were established by God, they're supported by God, and if we reject it, we're in essence rejecting God. It's functioned for 6,000 years, done pretty well. The fact that there are failures is not because of the system not working, it's because we are sinners. We get up in the morning and we contemplate sin. So remember, it's sin. Because of our sin, it has not worked flawlessly, but it still worked. Now there are two groups within the family that need our protection: women and children. And let's start with the toughest first. And like I said, we'll go into this in depth next time, but not until next time. How do we protect women, and from whom do we protect women? In 1 Peter 3, verse 7, it says this: husbands likewise, and we'll get into likewise next time. Likewise, same as what? So there's a context leading up to this. Husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Now, what does all that mean? Well, what is the nature of a woman's weakness? That's really the question, and I can't answer it right now. I'll do my best next time. I'll give you several options, but I'm hoping that you will study those notes, look them over, study the passage carefully, not just verse 7, but verses 1 through 7. What's Peter talking about? And what's the nature of the woman's weakness? If the Bible says the woman is the weaker vessel, we have to define weakness, and we have to define what the vessel is. Is the vessel her body? Is the weakness her physical weakness? Because women are not as strong as men, generally, although there's probably a good number who could beat the tar out of me. So let's look at a few brief differences. First of all, there's physical differences. A woman has a greater constitutional vitality. She has a higher pain tolerance. A woman's metabolism is usually lower than a man's. Men and women differ in their skeletal structure. Women have a shorter head, broader face, less protruding chin, shorter legs, and longer trunk. Does that make them weaker? To me, it just makes them different. A woman's brain is wired differently than a man's brain is. Does that make her weaker? No, it just makes her different. She's got larger kidneys. Can you imagine that? Larger kidneys. Imagine men walking around with large kidneys. Well, she has larger kidneys than we do, typically. Does that make her weaker? She has a larger liver, larger stomach, and a larger appendix than the average man. Smaller lungs. A woman's heart beats faster. I could go on and on and on. There's 20% more fluid in a woman's bloodstream than in a man's. She has fewer blood cells than a man has. What does that do? Well, we'll look into that. During World War II, women were working in the factories, and because of the stress of the war effort, they increased the workday from 10 to 12 hours. The accident rate for women went up 150%, and it didn't change at all for men. And that's part of the physical differences. It's just the way it is. Does that mean she's weaker? Not necessarily. It means she's different. We still have to get into the issue of what makes women the weaker vessel. Next, we look at marriage as the means by which the family is established for the protection of children. Since children are by nature foolish, the Bible said so, someone is needed with wisdom to protect and train them. When you get that baby home from the hospital, you've got about 18 years to turn that foolish baby into a wise adult. 18 years. So you can't waste any time, can you? How do I know they're foolish? Well, the Bible says they are. Proverbs 22:15, it says, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him or her. When I speak of the issue of foolishness, it's not necessarily that they're silly, which is our normal thinking about the English word fool. A biblical fool is someone who is unable to discern right and wrong, good and evil. We have to change that. A wise person can discern right and wrong and good and evil. So notice that our children start out as fools. That doesn't mean that they're stupid. It just means that they have no ability to discern right and wrong, good and evil. The home environment is the perfect environment for the raising of children. Remember, when you get that baby home from the hospital, you're not raising a child. You're raising an adult. You're starting with a child. No other environment, whether it be child care, church programs, extended daycare, so on and so on, nothing replaces that mom in the home with a child. Nothing. I know it's difficult to live on a single income. For some of you may think it's impossible. Better to live in poverty, I'm thinking. I've had my share of poverty. And if you're smart, you'll have your share too. The love and discipline of parents will turn our foolish children into wise men and women of God in their day. And remember, we've got 18 years to pull it off. The next thing about the plan of God in regard to marriage is it's not to be forbidden. Turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verses 1 through 3. 1 Timothy 4, 1 through 3. It says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times," I believe those are the days we're living in now, "some will depart from the faith." Some. It's a wholesale escape. "Some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth." Forbidding to marry. So one of the false teachings in the future, and I think it's coming up right about now, is forbidding to marry. Right now they're just saying marriage is unimportant. Don't bother. Just live together. Hook up. So marriage is not to be forbidden. It's to be encouraged. And finally, physical love in marriage is to be enjoyed. In Proverbs 5, 18 and 19 it says, "Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. As a loving deer and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you at all times, always be enraptured with her love." See that Hebrew word for raptured? Drunk. Be drunk with love for your wife. Notice that the husband is to be enraptured with this love for his wife. The Hebrew word is usually translated as drunk. So we're going to get into far more of this as we move along. But I hope that you'll do as I asked. Go to my website, shoeleatherfaith.org, and download that one file. There's about 6 files up there. You're welcome to all of them. They're all free. There's one raw file, 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7, Me, Obey Him, that's the title. Download that and study it out, because on Friday I'm going to put up the next video and we'll discuss that very issue, and I'm going to ask for your opinion. And I need your opinion, because this issue of the woman as the weaker vessel is a tough one. And I don't have a finalized answer. I've got a couple of ideas, but that's all I've got. So anyway, until next time, pray for your marriage. Pray for yourself in your marriage. Or if you're planning to get married, pray about that future date when you're going to be married and how that's going to completely change your life.